Welcome to the Socialite series, where we celebrate and promote women who influence the world. We do this each and every week to bring you information, inspiration, and motivation from socialites who have something to say. I'm your host, Monica Karst. Now let's get this party started. Well, hello, party people. It's that time, the time where we get to celebrate amazing women all on a Tuesday. If you've tuned in today, you're listening to the Socialite series. If it's your first time, welcome. So glad to have you here. And if you're coming back, thank you for joining us. I'm Monica Karst, your host, and we are coming live from Santa Cruz, California today with episode number 17, Pushing Through My Fear to Live an Authentic Life. Yep, with guest host Rebekah Dyana. But before I introduce Rebekah, I want to make sure to remind you, you can always call in and join the conversation by dialing 248-629-0921. Again, that's 248-629-0921. And this is live radio, so you never know what you're going to get. And a special thanks to our sponsor, Santa Cruz Skin Solutions and Integrated Wellness, where Jenna Lee and her team treats their clients with a holistic clinical approach to healthy skin and a healthy body. So be sure to visit them at santacruzskinsolutions.com. So here we are with our guest host, Rebekah Dyana, who is a body sex facilitator. So, Rebekah, I'm just going to bring you on, and we are going to talk about how amazing you are and exactly what that means. Welcome to the show. Come on in.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. I'm so happy to do this. I've been looking forward to it.
Well, I'm super excited to have you on here. You have a big list on your website of all of the things that you do. And as a sex facilitator, let's go into that and that title and exactly what that means and what you offer. Can we talk about that for a minute?
I would love to.
Perfect.
Yes, I would love to. Body sex facilitator is a person who practices body sex workshops or does the workshops. And I learned this from a very famous, wonderful woman named Betty Dodson. And she is very well known in the sex education world. She is 88 years old and has been doing these workshops for about over 40 years with some breaks in between here and there. And she recently, about 10 years ago maybe, started having a business partnership with a woman named Carlin Ross, who's younger than her, and Carlin really wanted her to bring back the body sex workshops for women. And so they did together, and then about 3 years ago, decided that they were going to certify women to do this work. And I happened to just fall into this by different circumstances. I could get into the details, but basically I'll just say this. I was having another sexual reawakening, which I had about every 10 years, it seems. I see it as who I am really trying to resurface or surface and just become that person who is very sex positive, wants to express my desire when I want to, no holds back, feel my sexuality within my being. And because that was happening, that led me to Betty. That's how I see it. And so there are about 30 of us that they have certified throughout the whole world. There's only been, I think, about 7 or 8, maybe 9 of us at the most that have actually held a workshop. And so that's what that is. Now, the workshop is only for women. And do you want me to tell you what we do? I can tell you. It's very simple. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's a bold thing that it's a very bold thing that we do. And when people first heard me talking about it, they thought I'd gone nuts for sure. But for me, I felt very drawn to it, and I am kind of a very open-minded person anyway. And even for me, as an open-minded person, I was like, whoa, okay, but I'm going to do it because I believe in sex education. So what happens is the women come, there's usually no more than 10 in a workshop, and because you want to keep it intimate, because it's such a vulnerable workshop. The women come in, I am naked, completely no clothes. They take their clothes off right away, and they come and sit in circle. And the reason we do this is because what we want to do is decrease negative body shame, or decrease body shame. And we also want to be vulnerable and raw and open and really allow ourselves to go through this vulnerable process of, you could say, healing, of knowledge, of knowing. And we also want to increase our pleasure potential. So this helps, because if you're not so ashamed of all the imperfections or what we might deem to be not acceptable within the culture, that affects the way we feel pleasure. It's a total one thing to another.
Right. So you're just walking in and you're just stripping it off and raw right at the moment at the door. That's basically how it starts, is the vulnerability, but it also is, I think of it as strength and liberating too. So for me, being on the outside and thinking of this, I'm like, oh my God, I'd be scared shitless walking into a room and getting naked, even though I am comfortable with being naked around other women. I still feel like it would be intimidating for me, but at the same time, it seems exciting, because why can't you challenge yourself to do this? What is wrong with being naked around other women and celebrating? What do you do for people who are extremely nervous to actually take action and do this?
There isn't anything I can do, really. I mean, I can't like draw women to the work, really. I just have to be myself. And on my blog, I'm very vulnerable, like in terms of emotional, and also I blog about how I self-pleasure and all kinds of things. And the way I look at it is I have to do this. I have to be more vulnerable so that women can step into vulnerability a little bit.
Right.
And if they can't do it, then they just can't come to the workshop. That's all there is to it. You have to be ready at a certain level.
And and you're having success. You're filling these workshops.
Well, no, I have to say, I just did my very first workshop, my real one. I've done a couple of ones where people were there clothed, and so on, but I have not. I only just did my very first one, and it wasn't full, but it was perfect. There were 6 women,
fabulous.
And it was perfect, and I just finished the workshop, and all of us are on like this amazing high and happiness. And actually, the key word is joy. And I say this, I'm just writing a blog about it, which I'll be publishing the next day or two with pictures and so on. Not pictures. Well,
okay.
I mean, we do photograph naked bodies if the women are okay, but we don't attach the heads to them,
Right.
And the faces, the faces,
Gotcha.
So it's more anonymous, right? But anyway, and so I have to be very vulnerable in every way. And this was my hardest thing to do. But we'll get into that in a minute after I finish telling you about the workshop. So then what we do is we sit around and talk about our bodies, how we feel about them, and how we feel about our orgasms. Because orgasm is very much not the real true orgasm for women, is not promoted within society. And it's more about, like, sex has always been more about procreation, having babies, or male oriented, their pleasure, not ours. And so this is something that we really promote in body sex. We want women to claim their pleasure in life. And we believe we live in a state of pleasure anxiety. Even though it might look like we go out there and we try to do this and we do that and we do all these things, when it comes to real pleasure within our bodies, this is something we're cut off from in general. Now, not all people are. I'm not saying this is 100%, but there is a lot to be known more about it. So that's what we do first. Then we take a break, because that takes a while for everyone to process all of that. And then we come back and we go over some charts of female anatomy, and then we actually do what we call genital show and tell, which is probably one of the most vulnerable things we do. And I show off, not necessarily show off, but I show. Yeah, sure, show off.
Sure, it sounds like you're showing off.
Yeah, everyone shows off their genitals. I mean, they show their genitals. I show mine first because, see, I have to show the vulnerability first, right? Because I'm the leader. And
leading by example.
Exactly, leading by example. And then each woman comes up next to me, and I treat her like a loving mother, like Betty says. We be like a loving mother, and you look in the mirror and with the light on at your genitals, and we talk about them. And we ask women to squeeze, show how the strength is in their vulva, and just all the ways it looks, and they're all so different, and they're all so beautiful. And they're just beautiful vulvas. I don't think I've ever seen an ugly vulva. So this is something, because a lot of women don't think their vulvas are beautiful, but we really try to get them to see the beauty in their vulva. And I have actually seen a vulva one time that didn't, because she was kind of hiding it, so it was all kind of crunched up, and she wasn't showing us her beautiful flower. And she was saying, I just think it's so ugly. And by the end of it, it was this beautiful flower. So what we believe about ourselves shows, right? Anyway, so we end that day. Did you want to comment, Monica?
I'm listening, and I'm taking it all in, and just processing. I'm processing as the beauty in it, and I have not seen a lot of them, so I can't compare. But I love the story of having her be able to blossom. I understand that story, and I think that's it's beautiful.
Yeah, it was really amazing to watch that. It really was amazing. So anyway, then the next day we get back in circle again, and we process some of what occurred, because a lot of people have gone through some processing around that. Right. And then we have a demonstration of masturbation, and we talk about masturbation, like what it includes, which basically I'm just going to say these three things. Need lubrication. We believe in vaginal penetration and clitoral stimulation. And those three things are very important to put in so that you can have. Now, people do a variety of things. Some people don't want something up inside of their vaginal canal. And also with vibrators, we don't believe women should really use them too much until they get a little older. We want people to know how to pleasure themselves with hands to really make that connection with themselves. But in the workshop, you don't have to use the tools and things that we have there available, but we do talk about it. And so then I have somebody next to me, which we call our stunt cunt, and she shows people how to self-pleasure themselves. And then we actually have what's called erotic recess, and we self-pleasure together, which I know is the piece that most people go, my God. Well, my best friend,
the whole thing, I'm just like, wow, okay, this is a whole process. So you are doing hands-on sex education and sexuality. You're doing the whole shebang. I mean, you are doing it. This is and it's a whole weekend, the whole weekend of this?
Yeah, I'll explain that in a minute, how this works in terms of what it is. But and let me just finish this. My best friend came to my workshop, and she was so worried about this piece, the masturbation piece. And she just had such a great time. She was one of the first women to have an orgasm. She had many. She was very vocal about it. And then she purchased the wand and the barbell. Those are the names of the tools in which I use, the magic wand and the Betty's barbell, which is like a dildo. And she just couldn't wait to get those home with her. So, she ended up being, having the whole thing. I told her, I said, by the time you go through all of the vulnerability, you'll be prepared for this.
Sure.
If you were just to come in and start doing that, no way. No way could that happen. So then we finish with that, and then we take a little break because, we need some fuel after using up some
That's fuel. A lot of work.
Yeah. A lot of work. And then we break up into, well, this time there was only 6 of us, so we just had one group, or sometimes you break up into 2 groups, and each woman gets a full-on body massage, non-sexual, and 5 minutes on one side, 5 minutes on the other, and that's how we end the workshop. Now, I just want to go back to the orgasm piece and the masturbation. It is masturbation. We are having our independent orgasm. We are not interacting with women. Now, I mean, you might sit up and look, or, that type of a thing, and that's totally okay to do, but we're not touching each other or stimulating one another, okay? Because to me, that is the safety, right?
Right.
But it's also the taboo, in a sense, so much of sex is other-oriented all the time. But the truth is that masturbation is the foundation of all human sexuality. This is something I learned from Betty, and I always tout it and say it. And if we don't have a good connection, which is a basis in childhood, usually, because women who don't masturbate because they were shamed to or whatever, until they get older, or if they ever do, have a hard time having orgasms, because you have to make that connection from the sexual piece of ourselves to our brain. It's a connection. And these are neural pathways that develop, and they're natural. Babies masturbate in the womb. Little children masturbate. This is just what we do, and this is what we're supposed to do. This is what we're meant to do, is have pleasure. And the clitoris is the only organ in the body for pleasure. It's the only organ in the body that's only for pleasure. And, men don't have that either. They don't have, their penis is a combination of things, right? They pee out of it, and as well as have pleasure with it. But our clitoris is only for pleasure. That's what it was made for. So that's the workshop. And so
okay.
At the end of the thing, that's the workshop. And as far as the workshop goes, Betty does it a different way. It's in her apartment in Manhattan. So she does it from 1 to 6 on a Saturday and 1 to 6 on a Sunday. But my friend and mentor, who's another body sex facilitator, Natasha from Canada, who is oh my God, I could not have done this without her. She's been the one to help me brave the territory and break down my fears.
Right. So that was what I was going to ask. Like, okay, this is sex is a taboo topic still. It's 2016. It's a taboo topic for women to talk about still. And then on top of that, you have a business that is surrounded by a taboo topic, a taboo environment, and it feels like, to me, which would be a lot against you. How have you been able to find the support and to stand up for yourself and for women, and to keep trudging to do this type of work? It sounds like you have another mentor, a co-facilitator. Tell us about that. I mean, there's got to be hardships. There's got to be obstacles and hurdles on your journey to do this.
Oh my gosh.
What do you do? I mean, how do you get over that? That's huge.
It is huge. And thank you so much for being able to recognize that. And the thesis, which I actually haven't really finished yet for Betty and Carlin, but I have done it somewhat by blogging so much, is how am I going to end sexual repression? That's our thesis we have to write. And so that's huge, right? I got to take a chunk into that type, here and there in my life. I'll never end it, of course, but that's my goal. And so the first thing that comes to when I'm writing my thesis is I have to first end it within myself. The voice that I have silenced within me, and the shame and the embarrassment and not meeting up to everyone's standards. I mean, when I first told my family about this, I invited them to come over to my house to watch her video, which is a body sex workshop. And they were like, "No, have you gone off your rocker?"
Yeah, I'm sure you got that. I'm sure.
And it was hard, but I lived with this darling, I had my Christian roommate, and she watched it with me, and she thought it was great. So, in fact, she went with me to New York for my workshop. So, anyway, I mean, it's been a gradual thing. And of course, what really works the best, and I don't think I even said this, which is very important to say, it's one of probably the most important things to say, is this workshop came out of consciousness raising groups of the 1970s with women during the women's movement. That's how this workshop even came to fruition. And Betty started having a CR group. I went to some when I was 18. I didn't know much because, it was the older women who were suffering behind women's oppression at that time. Not that I wasn't, but I wasn't aware of my oppression. They were more. And so she had this CR group, we call them, in her apartment. And the women themselves, over time, Betty had a huge interest in sex. That was true. And I'm sure she kind of influenced the group that way. But as a group is how this body sex workshop developed. It was women's ideas and opinions. How about we look at each other's genitals? How about we masturbate together? It wasn't Betty saying, let's do this. It was the women.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What did you say?
Oh, no, I was saying they did it as a collective. So it was generated and out of curiosity and a need at the time and at the moment. So like all great things come together when there is a movement and a desire.
That's it. And so what's happening is as we get certified here, we are in a group, and it's and like a secret group on Facebook, right, that we have, and we are able to talk with each other and bring up things and topics, and we communicate online, and support each other, and that is the only way that this can happen is support. It was the way it started, its inception, and the only way for it to keep it going is with support as well. And if I hadn't had, Natasha, especially in Canada, Natasha Salash, who just came to my workshop, she came here and she just helped me so much. I mean, it would not have been what it was without her. And I also am following her lead. And after 2 workshops, she decided to do a retreat workshop. And that is what I had. And for me, I wouldn't ever want to do it any other way. Because when you have the social time and the ritual time, it is so full of an experience. I mean, I could almost cry. I'm probably not going to cry, but inside, I cry sweet tears for the beautiful women that were there and how it was non-stop talking, non-stop communicating, because we need this so much. This opportunity to really be vulnerable with each other at the very deepest of levels.
Yeah. Well, hearing you. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out. I'm saying, hearing you, there's so much to say and so many questions to ask, because hearing you and coming from a place where it still feels like, I'm going to admit, it still feels taboo for me to talk about this, like to go into a room and to do that, I would feel so vulnerable. And I know that you've had to overcome, you didn't just walk into this and say, oh no, there's nothing wrong with this. You had to come to a point where you're comfortable with this and being able to facilitate, and then bringing in other women who are not super like comfortable with it. And can we circle around back to, like, you have another profession, a profession that's, what is considered the norm and completely the opposite of this. What was the mindset that took you from, oh, I'm going to be a sex facilitator, and to become comfortable? You have to have challenges and fears and constant oh wow, just that. How did you overcome that? Or are you still overcoming it? And how do you deal with it?
I think we're always overcoming it, and like I'm going to speak to what you're talking about, but I just want to say one thing. When Natasha or I are going to publish something, a blog that's really vulnerable, we'll say, would you like that right now on Facebook? Because, I don't want to be sitting there all out, with my balls out, basically.
Sure.
And I need some kind of, like support in this, and so, that is a help, right? And getting through the fear. But as far as my profession, I'm a nurse, and that is a very, like nurses to me, and I think people do agree here, it's like they have to be almost like a nun, right?
Yes.
And I'm not a nun, and I've never been a nun, and I never would want to be a nun, So, but I am a nurse. Nuns are beautiful. I mean, I work with nuns, and they're just amazing, and I totally respect them and in every way. They're just awesome people. But I wouldn't want to be a nun because I don't want to be without sex in my life. I mean, I don't know if nuns masturbate, and sex is masturbation, but I wouldn't want to be that. So anyway, but and so it's not fair to put that kind of on a nurse. Like a nurse has to be so like perfect in every way in society somewhat, I feel. I mean, maybe this is my own thing though, I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm putting this on myself, right?
Well, it could be very well. And I see nurses as being able to, like, it makes more sense that you're comfortable with your body and comfortable with other people's bodies, because that's what you do. You do it in a non-sexual way all the time while you're working. So kind of, it makes more sense to me that you're going to be more comfortable than I am, who, does it just, to me, that little piece is like, oh, okay. But then there still goes to the body shaming. We all have that. And,
True.
True. Just because you're a nurse doesn't mean you overcome that.
Yeah. Now, when I was, when Betty and Carlin are training us, they told me, oh my God, that nursing part of you just comes out, especially when I'm doing genital show and tell, because I'm so
sure.
Right? I mean, I'm so comfortable with bodies, in every way. So that's a good thing. But I did worry that if I'm also, doing this thing of, and so I blogged for a while, then I went away from it, and I almost wanted to just take my website down. No, I can't have that on there, right?
Yeah.
And I've gone back and forth in waves of like, like repressing myself or oppressing myself, and then coming back out again and going in and going out. And I've had to do it like that because of my fear. And so, but with Natasha's support especially, I have been able to go ahead and go back out there again, start blogging again. And I guess I kind of got to a place of, okay, if they fire me, I'll sue them.
So this straight. So I hear you going back to the very essence of what I stand for, which is you have to have your support group. Everyone has to have their support group. You can't do it alone. If you do it alone, you're going to kill yourself. It's just not necessary. And also what I hear you saying is you do it in fear. You're afraid, you have that fear, and it lives inside of you and you feel it, but you do it anyways. And that's what propels you forward. So that's a very, very important key piece that you just gave to us. So Rebekah, tell us how to find you, because we're coming up on the end. How do we find you? What do you have coming up next? And if someone's interested in going to your event, give us some info.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say one thing. At the end of my workshop, they all knew this was my first workshop, and they were so supportive. And they were saying, "Okay, when's the next one?"
Right. Well, that's fabulous.
Yeah, and I got a check in my purse from a woman who is going to come back because I'm going to offer it for the next person. And she goes, "How much?"
That's fantastic. What a success. That's a celebration for you. Congrats.
Yeah. So, I told her January, but I may have to do it early February. I'm not quite sure yet because, I just ended the workshop 2 days ago. So I am definitely going to have another workshop either late January or early February. I'll have the dates more exact once I, talk to people about the home. I hope to rent again because we had a beautiful place. I mean, it was just over the top gorgeous.
And when that happens, where will we find the information on the event? What website?
On the website, Pleasure Journey. Just spelled just like that, pleasurejourney.com. And I will have the event listed and the date. And as far as any other things going, I really do want to start doing, and I'm going to start doing this soon too, is having meetups, maybe once a month or every so on, to have little groups of women to come and encourage them to open up more about their the issues and the questions they have, and I'm hoping to bring more women to the circle that way.
Neat.
So, yeah, that'll be listed on my website. I did have a couple of web meetups before. So I'm going to start that process as well.
Great. Well, Rebekah, what I will do, and for everybody listening, is I will put your website and all of your information on the Santa Cruz Socialites Facebook page. And I am so thankful for you coming on as a guest host today. Thank you. Thank you to our guest, Rebekah Dyana, to our producer, Damian, and for you for listening. So don't be shy. All of you, get out there and share, like, and comment on our social media platforms. Thank you so much, Rebekah. That's a wrap for today's show. And this is Monica Karst reminding you that every day is a day to celebrate. Cheers. Thank you for tuning in to the Socialite series. To find out more, visit us at santacruzsocialites.com and monicakarst.com. Until next week, be seen and be heard, and get out and shine your social light on your community.